Lilian, what amazes me is that anybody in authority ever approved this thing, and you tell me this was approved in 2001.
The permit was the plant was opened in February 2000, and the planning permission was given in 1996 when Sir Christopher Hampson was chair of the Environment Agency and chair of Rugby Cement Board.
Oh, this is incredible. I mean, if this was the United States, this would be one of the biggest scandals imaginable. What a conflict of interest. Where is Sir Christopher Hampton now?
Well, I don't know where he is now, but his son's still involved in the cement industry. It's Christopher Hampson. Yeah. And not only that, but we bought shares and we went every year to the shareholders meeting and got hold of the microphone and said, what are you going to do about this? And there he sat, chair of the board. And now since then, it's Stuart Davis, who was the managing director of Cora Steel, where the Corby regeneration project has now damaged and handicapped all those children. He came to Rugby as managing director of Rugby Cement in 2002, and he turned it into a co-incinerator without following any proper legal means. And then he's become the Sustainable Commissioner to Europe on his second 3-year term. Stuart Davis.
Stuart Davis, chairman of the Sustainable Development people. This is the absolute, as far as I'm concerned, this is the absolute opposite for sustainable development. There is a relationship between zero waste and sustainable development. It's called zero waste. We shouldn't be making any waste if we can possibly avoid it. And instead of doing that, these people celebrate waste. They get as much waste as they can, chop it up into little pieces, and feel good about burning it and polluting people. I mean, even if they didn't pollute people, it's a complete waste of resources. And it's the opposite thing to sustainability. If we're really interested in sustainability, we reuse, we recycle, we compost, we reduce as much as possible. To burn it for a few penny worth of energy, that is not sustainable. So, I mean, we've got two outrages here. Let's remind us the name. Sir
Christopher Hampson.
Sir Christopher Hampson
was involved initially with the cement plant.
Yeah,
Hampson.
Yeah.
And then it's Stuart Davis, who's just been appointed the second 3-year term by Hilary Benn, the Minister for the Environment and DEFRA. And so this is why we're having so much trouble in Rugby fighting this, because these people are at the very core of government that have done this. And that's why it's been so hard to show what's happening. And further to that, they've also increased the contents of the toxic contents of the waste. When they started, they consulted the people. They said it's a local solution to a local problem, which is absolute rubbish because a lot of it's imported from Europe. Then the non-hazardous waste, refuse-derived fuel, is now being had more and more chemicals put into it. So they increased the chlorine, the fluorine, the sulfur. Well, they've increased the lead. So basically, the hazardous contents is almost the same in non-hazardous and hazardous waste. The only difference is the metals are slightly higher. And now the emissions are increasing year on year. Since 2000, it just goes up every year.
So again, look, I mean, we could make it complicated. We could go into the pounds of lead and all the other pollutants. So what, they only measure it twice a year, right?
Well, they only measure it twice a year. And in 2007, the lead went up by 300%. The antimony went up and arsenic by 3 times. Some went up tenfold. And when we asked them why did this happen, they gave us the CEMEX report. And in the report, they said that the emissions, on investigation, it has been identified that a single extractive result for metals during 2007 has resulted in an elevation of the mass emission figure. So it's just like they only sample twice a year.
And one is supposed to be a rogue measurement. I mean, that is so outrageous. Number one, if they were going to do this scientifically, they would be measuring this every week or every day. The fact that you only drop down to 2 measurements a year is ridiculous from a statistical point of view, from a scientific point of view, because the input can vary from day to day. But then to compound it and say when the number is too high for their purposes, then chuck the number out, is just compounding. It's criminal, actually.
And of course there's so much money involved in this, because the kiln is still burning 10 tonnes an hour of coal, but the calcine of the giant building there is burning about 1,000 tonnes a day of waste instead of coal. So they're probably about 80 to 90,000 pounds a day better off, because they're being paid so much to burn the waste. And naturally the waste is non-homogeneous, and so obviously it really, Yeah.
Well, be careful. You've just used the word non-homogeneous. Unfortunately, a lot of people watching this program, their eyes are going to glaze over. So let's come back. Let's just stare at this picture again for a moment. as I said at the beginning, this is not a mock picture. Somebody hasn't made this up. They haven't played around with photography. That huge plant, permitted in 2001, started in 2001, is operating right next to these houses. And that's, if anybody is dealing with the environmental agency anywhere in the UK, this is what you should remember. If they're telling you or trying to pretend that they're in the interest of the environment, that they operate in the interest of the people, look at this picture, and that is clearly a lie. And until the environmental agency gets rid of the people that allowed this to happen, then nobody in this country should take the word of the environmental agency seriously on anything, because anybody that does this cannot be trusted.
And can I just make one last point as well? They went in the House of Lords and they told them in sworn witness statements that I am the only person in Rugby who has any concerns about the cement works, that I am one rich woman who has carried out a private and personal vendetta, and there is no public interest in Rugby or elsewhere, and no one but me in the world has any concerns.
And this is disgusting. And again, I appeal to anybody who's Christian or thinks they're a human being. How can you let this happen to? If you hear about this, how can you let one woman be treated this way? Once upon a time, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Rugby that were opposed to this facility. But when they started making threats, and when it became clear that Lilian might lose her house, then they ran for cover, which is sad, but it's human. People don't want to lose their houses in these battles. But doesn't it tell you something? When they stoop to tactics like this, it's no longer the Britain that I grew up in. It's no longer the Britain that believes in human rights and decency and democracy. For a public agency to treat people like this because they have the audacity to complain and to resent having this poison poured over their lovely community, to have somebody treated like this just takes it to a whole new level of environmental injustice. And if you think I am emotional on this, you're absolutely right. It's very seldom I have seen anything as gross as this, and it has to stop. I have no axe to grind here. No one is paying me to be here. I just had a few extra days, so I came up to help. But I just find this intolerable, and anybody that can look at this and say that this is okay, and accept that this woman can continue to be persecuted in this way, then I'm sorry. Don't call yourself a Christian. Don't call yourself a decent human being. Don't keep your mouth shut. Open your mouth. Silence kills. Silence kills. It kills people and it kills justice.